Friends, welcome to this episode of Coffee with Gaz. The coffee is here and it is strong. I've been playing around with a new little coffee maker. I think they call them a bricka. Is that what they're called? I don't actually know. But those little metal coffee pots, coffee pots, you pop them straight onto the hot plate and make some legit coffee out of that. So yeah, they're pretty decent, would recommend. But anyway, guys, with that said, for those of you who are unaware, my name is Gary McGowan, because I imagine that some people will stumble across this video at random, having searched for something related to studying medicine or myths about studying medicine or whatever, and others will obviously just be following along with Triage and my work, and you'll be familiar with who I am. So I'm a medical student from or studying at the University College Cork, UCC, in Ireland. And my personal background is that I've got a degree in physiotherapy, so that's what I studied previously. But I've also probably got maybe somewhat of a unique perspective on the medical student experience, because I've also got my own business. So I run the business Triage Method. That's the YouTube channel that you're watching. And I've been doing that kind of throughout my time as a medical student thus far. And as a result, I think there have been some unique challenges that I've had to overcome, and maybe a slightly different perspective on the whole process as a result of it not necessarily being the main focus of my life, you know what I mean? Because I think sometimes when people, study medicine or they study any degree, they kind of define themselves as that, like I am a medical student, that's what I am, that's what I do, that's what my life, my social circle, what I wear, but that's what all my life revolves around. Whereas for me, I think that's very, very different, and I think that might give me maybe an interesting perspective for some of you who are hoping to go on and study medicine, and especially those of you who maybe have some other unique challenges, like, I don't know, having a family or having to work a part-time job and those sorts of things. I think maybe we can get something, or we can relate to each other in that sense. So yeah, basically why I wanted to record this video in particular about myths about studying medicine as a first year, keep that in mind, or someone who's gone through first year rather, is because like when I initially searched for a lot of videos as a hopeful medical student, when I was thinking about the process and I wanted to see what it was like, I was coming across a lot of videos from American YouTubers. I think a lot of them were based in the States, and not to be derogatory to my American friends, but I think in general, maybe it's just American medical students, but there's a tendency to kind of make things sound like real dramatic and chaotic, and maybe that's just because it's what goes on YouTube. But like the impression I always got was that like medical studying medicine or going to medical school is like the equivalent of like the world is just burning down around you. You have no time to do anything. You're going to be dying the whole time. We're going to be stressed all the time. Everyone's just studying 24 hours a day. Like they're the types of impressions that you get from those videos, or that I got at least. And I think there's obviously an incentive in place for people to create videos like that, because obviously if I make a video that makes studying medicine sound ridiculously challenging and the hardest thing in the world, it makes me look like I'm something special, whereas it's not necessarily what I want in terms of the purpose of producing my videos. But yeah, obviously what I'm saying is I can see why people paint it in that light. So I want to offer a slightly different perspective. So with that said, let's get into the discussion. And the first myth that I want to kind of discuss is the kind of idea that doctors are all geniuses, okay? And what you'll notice is that throughout these myths, as I discuss them, I am being some bit hyperbolic and at least trying to be some bit provocative in terms of there being an element of truth to these myths. Like obviously people who go in to study medicine are, somewhat intelligent, for sure. The average level of intelligence is pretty high. The barrier of entry is quite high to get into study medicine. You definitely have to jump through a lot of hoops. But I think like there's a very distinct difference between someone that you come across and you think, God, that person, like they've just got it. They're not just book smart, but they're also real competent in the real world. They're really good at making decisions on their feet. They handle stress well, etc. I think there's a big difference between that and just being able to be diligent enough to get through tests all your life, because I think that's basically what you have to do to get into medicine. You have to be the type of individual who can be disciplined enough and diligent enough to sit down and study for tests and reproduce information in the way that is desired on the test that you happen to be taking over and over again throughout your life, up to the point to your 20s or whenever you happen to enter or start studying medicine. But that's not necessarily what is rewarded in the real world. And maybe genius is the wrong word, maybe genius is appropriate, but basically what I'm trying to get across is that just because you study medicine doesn't mean that you're inherently infallible, or that you're, a genius at all things, or that these people are inherently way smarter than everyone else. Because I'll tell you, man, doctors say some stupid shit. Doctors do say some stupid shit. And the reason that I'm probably quite strong in this opinion is because I come from a personal training background. I'm quite interested in a science-based approach to exercise, nutrition, lifestyle in general, and some of the things that doctors will relay, certain doctors at least, about nutrition and exercise are frankly ridiculous. And that just kind of shows me that these people are as infallible as anyone else, and just the fact that someone can, learn off a certain amount of information as a medical student in their specific discipline doesn't necessarily mean that they have an all-seeing eye to all other fields, or that you should inherently trust them above someone else when it comes to an opinion that is not within their specific discipline, for example. And I'm mainly just trying to focus on medical students here, because obviously, I'm not a doctor. I'm a first-year medical student. A doctor could watch this video and say, who's this idiot to be giving his opinion? But yeah, you see that it's so common in the field of nutrition, especially medical doctors writing books about nutrition that are just absolutely ridiculous, that anyone that would be familiar with the field would just laugh at. And that just basically shows you that, these individuals can come across as being very clever, can get through all their tests, could be getting first-class honours in their degrees, but still be very much fallible. And I think something that's interesting there as well is just kind of the difference between studying for a test and having a general kind of scientific frame of mind, or a kind of a general good critical thinking apparatus, and often that's backed by kind of a good philosophy of science. Because I suppose there's a big difference between knowledge creation, the study of creating new knowledge, epistemology, or scrutinizing the quality of information, and simply learning information off. Because you could certainly get to the point where you are now a medical student where all your process so far has basically been just to study harder than everyone else, whereas you may not have actually developed the requisite critical thinking skills, the requisite ability to critically appraise research, to work through the scientific method, to understand what is good evidence, standards of proof, concepts of causality, all these different things. You might necessarily have actually gotten to that point, and as a result you're just learning information off, but you're not necessarily someone who is really, really good at working through what good information is, critically appraising it, etc. So basically, that's a total side note, and I didn't even need to bring that up, but the point I'm trying to get across is that you can have someone who is so much better at that. That could just be, and I don't say just in a derogatory sense, that could be a personal trainer. I know some personal trainers who are ridiculously sharp when it comes to assessing the quality of evidence, when it comes to seeing what good information is, thinking critically about it, etc. And I know some medical students who are terrible at doing that. So yeah, basically, point there being, guys, that you shouldn't necessarily just have this kind of idea that medical students or doctors are gods and infallible just because they've been able to pass all the requisite tests to get to where they are. So yeah, that's that point, more or less. Don't think I have too much else to say on that. The second point there is that medical students have no free time. Undoubtedly, probably the most common one here. The first point was yeah, there's some truth to it. The second one, I think there's less truth to this, and obviously it's still individual specific, but I think even as a medical student and someone who's studying medicine, as a first year, right? So for context, I studied the graduate entry medicine program, which means that it's fast-tracked essentially. So first year, so they say, is the hardest year of the course, because effectively what you're doing is you're taking the first 2 years of a standard medicine degree and you're compressing them into one year. So we worked through 2 years worth of information, which would already be challenging, into 1 year. So it's certainly there, it's certainly compressed. But even with that said, I still had, a lot of free time, and that's not to say that we're all equal in terms of our capacity to study, etc. But even as someone who was working throughout the week, working online with my business, training quite regularly. I train both Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and my own kind of standard resistance training. I was also doing a lot of running in the first semester, kind of between the 10 and 30k distance, so that being relevant because obviously that takes a good degree of time. So with all of that in mind, I was still able to allocate sufficient time to my studies to be able to, get good results and feel like I'm making progress in terms of what I'm learning and everything. And I would say, to be fair, I think in general, I'm someone who, I'm quite efficient with my time in terms of studying. I don't really mess around, and I think that's something that really stands to you as a medical student if you're able to sit down and just fucking focus on what you're doing. So many medical students just waste ridiculous amounts of time, and this is where this myth essentially comes from, because what people will do at times is they'll go to the library for 6 hours during the day or whatever, but for 50 if not 60-70% of that time twiddling their thumbs, googling, half asleep, listening to music, taking out their phone, texting. It's not actual study, because they've given themselves that kind of time availability to basically fill. And basically, I like this kind of law, Parkinson's law, which essentially says that the amount of time required to do a task will fill the amount of time that you allocate for it. So for example, if you've got 3 hours worth of study to do and you go to the library for 8 hours, you'll probably get that 3 hours worth of study done over that 8-hour period of time, because you don't have that same time constraint that you could have placed on yourself if you were trying to be super efficient and doing everything as time effectively as possible. So I think there's a distinct difference between medical students who really just focus on the process of getting the work done versus the kind of just investing the time, because how many hours you study for does not necessarily relate to the quality of your education at the end, because ultimately what you're looking for is that you're able to learn the information that is required to understand where the gaps in your knowledge are, and to focus specifically on the areas that you struggle most with, and or the information that is most useful given your goal. So for example, if you're someone who wanted to go into cardiology, you might put way more emphasis into learning the cardiology related information rather than learning the gastroenterology stuff. That's not to say you don't want a general base, but you might, structure your time in that manner. Similarly, if you're someone who studied biochemistry previously as your bachelor's degree, then it makes no sense for you to spend the same units of time allocated to biochemistry as you would to physiology or anatomy, etc. So that's one of the things that I did. My background was in physiotherapy, so I had a relatively good knowledge of a lot of the musculoskeletal anatomy. At least I had a fairly good base in a good few of the physiology concepts, at least from my own work, as I discussed. So as a result, I was able to allocate my time accordingly. So when it came to things like pharmacology, I was able to say, I need to knuckle down and work really hard at that to do well, because a lot of it is new to me. So I was able to allocate my time specifically, not just wasting time saying, I'm going to do 8 hours of study. It was more so a case of creating a hierarchy of priorities. What's the most important thing? What's my weak point? What do I want to focus on? And then allocating my time accordingly. So I think if you begin to adopt that approach to your study, where you're strict with yourself, you give yourself time constraints, you don't just mess around with inefficient studying, even when it comes to going to class, for example, don't go to classes that aren't going to benefit you. It sounds like something. See, this is the thing. If you've been the kind of diligent student all your life, who just kind of follows the rules and goes by the book and has always just learned what the teacher says for your test, etc., then maybe your instinct is like, I need to go to all the classes. Whereas if you're actually trying to be smart about it, you actually want to just go to the classes that are going to benefit you. And that's essentially what I did, or what I tried to do at least. For a lot of the classes, like such as the anatomy classes, like anatomy lectures just aren't beneficial. You don't learn much in an anatomy lecture. You're better off to use some sort of interactive tool online, or to spend your own time learning the information rather than sitting in a lecture listening to it. Like, that may not be the case for everyone, but I found that for me, so I didn't attend that many anatomy lectures. Maybe I should have, And similarly, when it comes to things like epidemiology, right? So epidemiology is a subject I actually really like, and I actually like reading about that. It's something a lot of medical students hate, but we had these 2-hour lectures that would be like once per week, and a lot of the information I would have been familiar with. So I was kind of in a position where, look, I'll go to a couple of them, and sometimes I went to them and I was like, I shouldn't have went, I shouldn't have went to that. That was a waste of time. You could have spent it on something else. So instead, I basically stopped going and allocated my time to study, to something that was more productive, because I knew that I was pretty good at that subject and that I would do well in the end in that subject. So with all that said, guys, the whole point there being, be efficient, be specific. Don't just waste your time staring at lecture slides in front of you for hours on end, And similarly, manage your free time. This is the thing. If you want to be able to train and stay fit, schedule that time, just like your respective university is going to schedule the time at which you have to attend your lectures. Schedule when you're going to be at the gym, because what people end up doing is they kind of go home in the evening and they're like, oh yeah, I'll put on Netflix for a while and then I'll start my study. And you watch one episode, and then you're 2 episodes deep, and then you're 3 episodes deep, and then suddenly it's 9 or 10 p.m. and what you end up doing is studying then until 2 in the morning, Studying until 2 in the morning, when you literally could have just gotten that study out of the way, knocked it out, banged it out early, got to the gym for a while, got to bed early, or even went to the gym the next morning, So cut out the shit that isn't making your life better. And obviously, like that sounds counterproductive, because I just said, you can have free time, and obviously if you want to spend your free time on Netflix, that's totally appropriate. But if there are other things that are more of a priority that you'd rather be doing, like trying to get to the gym or get out for a walk or do something else, then maybe it'd be wise to schedule that. And likewise, try to put your study time at the times that you focus best. So, if you're not someone who does productive work at nighttime, then don't leave it all to nighttime, If you're a morning person, set up your day in such a way that you can actually get up early, knock those hours out, boom, have it squared away, and then you can go to the gym in the evening, you can go for a walk, you can go for a run, you can do whatever you need to do, you can watch your Netflix, but the more effective you are with your time, the more likely you are to have that free time. And how people spend their time is obviously totally up to them. Like, lots of people would have gone on lots of nights out throughout the year, so there was plenty of that. People have the potential to be able to go on nights out. A lot of the Canadian students would have travelled around Ireland, so they had the freedom to do that. I was in Budapest in February. I think I went somewhere else, maybe in the first semester. I can't even remember. But I had plenty of time to be able to allocate to my jiu-jitsu, to my work, to studying, and that does depend obviously on the student. If you're someone maybe who's come from a non-science background and you struggle a lot with some of the scientific concepts, for example, if you've no background in physiology, you might need to work harder at that, so you might actually have less free time than someone else. But I think that on average, from what I've observed in my peers and in myself, if you're just effective with your time, you schedule your time, you focus on doing the work that's actually most important, I think you can still have a lot of free time and have still a good quality of life while studying medicine. Now, that may very well change in 2nd, 3rd and 4th year, especially with final year projects and placements, etc. I've experienced the kind of placement life from physiotherapy before, so I know that does bring additional challenges, but it's certainly still possible that you can live a good quality life. So I think that if you're someone who's trying to study, or you're thinking about studying medicine, but you're thinking, I've got a hobby, I don't want to drop my hobby, I would personally be very confident that you'll still be able to keep up your hobby and maintain the things that actually matter to you in life. So look, mightn't be true, but it's my opinion. So the third thing, sorry, I'm just referring back to my little myths here. Third thing is a quicker one, and that is that medical school teaches you everything. And this is very obvious to anyone who is a doctor, and it's probably not something that is immediately obvious as a first year medical student. However, as someone who has gone through the kind of physiotherapy education process, seeing the contrast between what you're taught and what is actually available in terms of like when you actually read the research and what is true. And even being familiar with certain areas of medicine that I would be quite interested in. You see what you're taught in college, and then you look what's actually done in the real world, or you even just read any actual medical textbook back there. You'll see that like what you're taught in medical school is so incredibly small compared to what is actually out there. And that's especially true when you start to consider the concept of specialties, because you know, if you're a cardiologist who is trained as a cardiologist for years and years and years, you know exponentially more about cardiology, about the heart, than someone who's trained in, let's say, gastroenterology, and vice versa in terms of the gastrointestinal system. Because despite the fact that you go through these systems when you're studying medicine, the specialization process is far more refined and far more nuanced. And I think that is something that if, as a medical student, you expose yourself to textbooks and clinical guidelines, etc., or even just go to governing bodies, like one of the websites I use a lot is the European Atherosclerosis Society, or the Journal of the American College of Cardiology. Like I kind of follow some of their resources and guidelines and stuff because I'm just interested in that stuff, and neurology as well. Like that'd be another thing I'd be interested in. Just looking at like, if you go to the Journal of Neurosurgery, like you're not going to learn the things that are presented in there when you're just kind of studying medicine in lectures. So that's probably something that's probably eye-opening for maybe non-medical students more than medical students. But yeah, basically you don't learn that much when you're studying medicine relative to what is actually out there. And I'm sure any doctor watching this would agree. And yeah, that doesn't mean you don't learn a lot, because there's a lot of information. There certainly is a lot of information. So that's just a short one, guys. Next one actually is you need a science background. And yeah, this is again one of those ones where there's an element of truth. So does a science background in a relevant field, does that benefit you? For sure, that can benefit you as a medical student. But generally it's only going to take care of small amounts. So for example, there's quite a few people who have backgrounds in biochemistry, but they would not have had much exposure to physiology or pharmacology or anatomy or epidemiology. So, and especially clinical concepts in medicine, which are very much detached, or at least a significant level higher than just the basic sciences. So even if, you know, someone has a background in the basic sciences, they'll have obviously a head start in terms of terminology and maybe scientific thinking and things like that, although that's not guaranteed. You can still absolutely catch up. You know, you can still absolutely get that step ahead. And I think medical students who are medical schools rather dedicated to graduate entry medicine, like UCC, they try to set up the curriculum in such a way that students from non-science backgrounds such as business, arts, etc., that they're able to take the first semester to really catch up. So the first semester is essentially dedicated more so to a general introduction to physiology, anatomy, biochemistry, pathology, immunology, etc., all the basic concepts in those subjects before getting into the systems-based stuff. So that means that even if you had one of those subjects covered in your previous degree, everyone's basically catching up in each respective area before you move on to the systems-based education. At least that was the case in UCC. And I know, you know, many of the non-science background students who did incredibly well. Certainly some had to work really, really hard, and probably a lot harder than those with a science background in the first semester. But I think by the time the systems come around, it was very much even in terms of what people were, or the time that people were having to commit, and their familiarity with the subjects. So obviously, you know, if you have a background in neuroscience, you're going to have a head start when it comes to studying neurology. Or, you know, like for me with physiotherapy, I had a bit of a head start when it came to the anatomy, and then probably the physiology and the biochemistry because of my actual work and interest in nutrition. But there were some subjects that were more or less completely novel. Pathology, a lot of pathology was new to me, especially when it came to systems-based stuff. You know, same with medical microbiology, immunology. Some of these subjects were pretty much new, completely new for me. So while I had a bit of a background, it certainly didn't give me a huge head start that put me ahead of everyone else. Absolutely not. So yeah, basically the reason I put this in here is because I would like someone who is from a non-science background, who's feeling unsure about whether or not medicine is appropriate for them, to feel like, yes, you can go ahead, you can absolutely do it. And like that's my approach to all of these myths. Like my main goal of making this video is so that people are actually encouraged to go ahead and chase their goals, rather than like being fear-mongered. You know, there's no point in me telling you that you're going to die if you study medicine, you're not going to make it. Like, that's just not helpful. So yeah, if you're from a non-science background, I think that there absolutely is the potential for you to study medicine and to do very well. And I think that one of the things to note is that in any clinical degree, you know, it's the same for physiotherapy, same for medicine, in any clinical degree where you have to work with patients in the real world, like there's so much to be said for the softer skills, the things that go beyond the specifics of what you actually learned in terms of decision making, in terms of communication, in terms of being able to collaborate with other members of a multidisciplinary team, etc. You know, I sound like I'm on my high horse here as a first year medical student. I could be awful at all this stuff, but it's still important to note that all of those factors come into how good or competent you're going to be as a doctor. So all of those things matter, and you could be someone who actually has a head start on all of those respective areas, whereas you may not have a head start with the basic sciences. So look at it in terms of like what is the composite of a doctor, rather than just the sciencey side of being a doctor. Because, you know, in terms of our clinical labs, what we do in first year is do a lot of simulated patient scenarios. So for example, taking a history from a patient that relates to the heart, so a cardiovascular exam, asking them different questions, trying to gather information, etc. And some people who might be very strong in the sciences are awful at speaking to people, you know, and gathering information. Whereas other people, when they speak to the simulated patients, it sounds so natural. They're able to engage well, they're able to maintain eye contact, you know, they're able to actually gather the information, be appropriately empathetic, ask the right questions, use clinical reasoning very well, even though their basic sciences may not be that strong. So look at what the composite of a doctor is, rather than just the sciences. That would be my message to anyone from a non-science background. So then, guys, finally, and the final thing is that only snobby upper class people study medicine. Personally, I don't like class terminology, because I just rather not go around thinking, how does my class or background compare to that of someone else, you know? But yeah, like, I mean, I'm from a housing estate in Killarney, County Kerry, you know, absolutely not from this privileged background that you might associate sometimes with studying medicine. My parents were not doctors. Neither of my parents went to college or completed a secondary level education, so the Leaving Cert or A levels or whatever. Neither of my parents did that. But I still, like, that didn't change my approach at all. If anything, like, my parents have both been like absolutely key inspirations for me in terms of getting here and going forward, because of my you know, being able to see their work ethic and their capacity to get through adversity, and what they've always taught me in terms of like just respecting everyone equally, you know, respect the people around you, work hard, do whatever you want to do. Like, that's basically what my parents always told me. So I don't think that you need to, you know, be from a privileged background, other than obviously there is a financial cost associated with medicine, but loans do exist. You can get loans. Like, I don't come from a privileged background, and I don't think that you need to be from a privileged background to be able to study medicine. Absolutely not. And I think that, you know, sometimes not being from that background can actually be super helpful, because I think if you're working with people in rural Ireland, for example, you've just never been exposed to people like that, because your socioeconomic status, your class, you have totally different values. You've never, you know, had to do the types of jobs that these people work. You're totally unable to relate to the things that they like, the TV that they watch, etc. You know, you could actually be at a disadvantage potentially, versus the person who's, like, you know, familiar with the local GA teams, and you're familiar with the local pubs, and you're able to have the crack, and you're able to kind of use like regular language when you're chatting with the person, just generally be able to have the crack, and not that you can't have the crack if you're an upper class person. That's the whole point. Like, that's what I said, I don't like using these kind of class terminology because it's just dumb, really. But yeah, like that's just something that I think I feel quite passionate about, because I don't necessarily come from an upper class background or anything like that, and my parents are just ordinary hardworking people, and who have absolutely been inspirational to me, as I said. So yeah, I would just like people to be aware of that, because ultimately I don't want anyone watching my videos to think that that is any sort of barrier, or to think that, yeah, this guy says that, you can study medicine if you want, but, he's from this privileged background or whatever. Like, absolutely not, that's just not the case. And obviously, I completely acknowledge that many people have barriers to moving forward in life, and those barriers vary considerably between individuals, and it's important to respect that, of course. But ultimately, like, I think an empowering message is one in which people are told that they can actually go ahead and achieve whatever they want to achieve, once they put in the work and go through the respective loopholes. That's bad terminology. Like, you probably shouldn't say loopholes. That sounds like you're cheating, doesn't it? Jump through the respective hoops, there you go, that are required to get to that end point. So yeah, if you watch this video, guys, and you're thinking, or if any one of those things was stopping you from potentially going ahead and studying medicine, I would say, like, just knock it down, go and do it. Obviously it doesn't mean that, like, because I said doctors aren't geniuses, that like you can just get into medicine without studying, or without being able to complete the GAMSAT, for example. Like, you have to still jump through those hoops. But I would just say that, there's definitely a considerable amount of variation between the types of people that you will meet when you study medicine. Some may fit the stereotype that people have a lot more than others, but there's a lot of variation. And I've met some of the greatest people so far in my first year. People from all types of backgrounds, people whose parents are doctors and consultants, and many people whose parents aren't doctors at all. I think that's another thing that probably ties in with the last myth, is that you study medicine if your parents were doctors, and that is true to some degree, because that is typically how medicine has existed and been passed down through the years, is that it was basically a familial thing, that the children of parents who were doctors, they become doctors, and it's still true to some degree. But lots of people in my class, their parents, they're not doctors at all. So yeah, if that's you, if you're like me, you're from County Kerry, from a housing estate, and you're thinking, don't know if that medicine crack is for me. Don't know if I could cut that. I think you probably could. So yeah, guys, I hope this video was in some way helpful. If you're watching this as a first time video, you haven't come across me before, sorry for the long form video. I'm not someone who keeps things concise. I think that's a waste of time. That makes no sense. But yeah, no, I think I'd rather just give people more comprehensive information, because when I came across, or when I was trying to go and study medicine, as I said, I was unable to find the videos that I thought would be helpful, particularly as an Irish student. And I will be doing more videos that are dedicated towards studying medicine in Ireland, at least as I go along. So remember, this video was made by a first year, or someone who's going into second year. So obviously my impression of many of these things could change as I go forward. So if you're interested in kind of keeping up or asking further questions or anything like that, feel free to drop those questions down below. I'd be more than happy to make follow-up videos. If you disagree with anything I said, please let me know. As I said, half my points, I'm kind of making them a little bit hyperbolic. I'm saying that doctors aren't geniuses, but I'm also not saying that like all doctors are dumb. Clearly that's not the case. So yeah, guys, I hope that was helpful. Drop your comments below, ask any further questions, and I will see you guys in the next video I record. If you do happen to be interested in the whole health and fitness thing beyond the whole boring medical student talk, do subscribe to the channel. And stay tuned for further videos, podcasts, exercise tutorials, etc. So that's it for me, guys. As always, it is in fact too easy.